Welcome to the Five Phenomenon Podcast. I am your host, Shane Hazen. With me again, Ted Haycraft.
It's me, Haycraft.
As mentioned, did I say it wrong?
No, I'm just Haycraft.
Wildcat.
Ted Haycraft.
Wildcat. On this episode, we are discussing Honor Majesty's Secret Service in lieu of No Time to Die, which I mentioned on last episode. I was really taken with. And I'm going to do a first that you prompted me to do.
Oh, you already talked about it last.
No. I said I'm going to talk about it on this episode.
Oh, okay.
I did compartmentalize and move it back.
Got it.
But spoiler warnings have been kind of something I haven't been figured out exactly, and to a certain extent I haven't given a shit about. I am going to give a full-blown spoiler warning on this episode for No Time to Die. If you have not seen the newest James Bond film, go see it and then come back to listen to this podcast, because that's a big reason we're doing Honor Majesty's Secret Service.
And I think I would say spoiler alert on OHMSS. Just don't come.
Well, I think it should be. We pick older movies that statute of limitations have passed, so It's like if you. I don't need to tell you what happened at the Empire Strikes Back, you know.
You would hope not.
But we watched No Time to Die together.
I think I embarrassed myself, didn't I?
I don't think you embarrassed yourself, but
did you could tell I was crying at the end?
I was crying at the end, but I wasn't as you were kind of a mess.
Yeah, I was.
I wouldn't say embarrassed, but you were just really the ending of it. These two movies, I'm surprised how paired they are together. We were talking beforehand. You said both of these have more Easter eggs than any other Bond movie, but also I think these are the two most emotional Bond movies.
Oh well, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, very emotional. I mean, so where do we want to start? I mean, or are you going to guide me here? Because I could. Do we want to talk?
Well, let's talk about. I guess because the only movie you really watched this week, which was last week, was No Time to Die. New movie. The one movie I saw. Have you ever heard of Red Sun? Have you seen it?
You talking about the
Terrence Young?
Oh yeah. What made you watch that?
It was on TCM. I had no clue this movie existed, and suddenly I'm flipping through, and there's a freaking movie with
Charles Bronson.
Charles Bronson, probably it's 70, 71, I think.
Yeah, Ellen DeLon.
So no, roll it out properly. This is Charles Bronson right after Once Upon a Time in the West, I assume, or pretty close after. The movie opens with him at a train station. He has a little more dialogue than he does in Once Upon a Time in the West, but it doesn't just have him. It has Alan DeLon. Kind of, I don't know, 3 years after La Samurai. I don't know. I think that's 67.
I'm not sure. Yeah, that's.
No, that's. I think it's earlier than that.
Probably.
But the craziest one, that's Toshiro Mifune, basically coming straight out of a samurai film into this.
Right.
How have I never heard of this movie? It's directed by Terrence Young.
And Ursula Andress, who is in the Dr. No, who Terrence Young directed.
She takes forever to get into the movie, but yeah.
So well, that's interesting. So what did you think? Its reputation is kind of like it.
I get it. It was fun. It was great fun. No, it was a lot of fun. But it was also Terrence Young. I was trying to pin exactly what type of humor I would do. And as we're going to go into the Bond talk, Guy Hamilton has the more infamous what he did with Bond humor, and Terrence Young was the more drier one. Maybe not Peter Hunt dry, but that was the kind of sense of humor I thought that was throughout the movie. Charles Bronson got a lot of dialogue in the movie, so he's like everyone else around him is not talking, which for someone who watches Once Upon a Time in the West as much as I do, that seems striking. But I mean, and maybe not being as big.
Well, you probably have a lot of Charles Bronson films to watch, or I don't know if you want to take the time to watch them all, but you probably haven't seen that many, have you?
I've seen a few. Mr. Majestic's is a favorite.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen a few, maybe not a lot, but
like I said, I think in some ways, I just picked up The Wrath of Man today on Blu-ray, and Jason Statham.
Yeah, we talked about this a lot. You think Jason Statham is the modern Bronson?
Sort of the only reason I say that is that unfortunately Bronson just was a workaholic. So there's a lot of okay films, but when he's in the right film, the right script, the right director, he's great, and so is Jason, I think. So
I guess I like your analogy just because what movies is Bronson a great actor in? Because he always seems like a great attitude.
Well, I mean,
and presence.
Well, that's your definition of acting. Is Clint Eastwood acting, is Gary Cooper acting. John Wayne. I mean, he's in that kind of mode, you know.
Yeah, okay. No,
And so, like, you got him in the Hard Times with Walter Hill and James Coburn bouncing off of Coburn, and he's great. But yeah, he's a pullback guy. You know, he sucks energy and almost instead of
sucks energy. That's a good description. But it was Bond related. That was.
Well, it's interesting because it's been on the radar from some friends. A comic writer friend of mine reviewed it on his Facebook, Chuck Dixon, and people were like, "Oh yeah, it's kind of hard to find. It's kind of a hard find a copy to find a good copy of that."
I just the stars. I just went through and like, how have I never heard of this?
Well,
movie? What was it? Did you remember when it came out?
Yeah, it was the drive-in. I haven't seen
it. It feels like a great drive-in movie.
Yeah, it was a drive-in movie that I saw, and it was at the time we were just beyond ourselves because it was Buffoni and Bronson together. You know, a lot of people didn't know who DeLon was. I probably didn't have much knowledge back in the day. But yeah, think about the international market. Think about the international market.
I think back to your early question, what I first thought. I think seeing those three on the I didn't see a poster. I would have seen just the credits. I kind of was thinking of a more modern genre hybrid that's a little more surreal in how it came together, and like it was pretty straight laced in like how the story set up is that Mifune is a bodyguard of a Japanese ambassador traveling across a train across the country. And Bronson and DeLon robbed that train. It's I don't know how much longer it's on TCM. Watch TCM, but recommend it.
Oh, cool! Yeah, that's exciting. Because a lot of times when we talk, you're always coming up with these really artsy or alternative stuff, and it's cool to hear you say an old ancient genre,
but
Western.
But the movie we're doing this for, No Time to Die. We'll finally talk about it. Again, spoiler alert on this because this movie not only how we compared the two earlier, just references on Her Majesty's Secret Service a lot.
There, and that's why you finally want to do an episode on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
On a favorite of yours.
Yeah, that's one of my babbling. I get.
You did this presented the movie a few years ago at the library for series, library series.
Right, we did the Road to Victory series, and then I just did a panel on it this past weekend down in MonsterCon/SpyCon.
Which was funny because you couldn't talk about No Time to Die.
I could not bring it up because all the people around me hadn't seen the Bond film. They would have killed me. So I'm sitting there with a straitjacket on at this panel saying, because it would help. I was trying to convince the point of the panel was like saying this could be is this the best Bond film or is it one of the best Bond films?
Let's get out of the way. The main overarching parallel between the two is it's one of the first Bond movies that not only makes a pretty emotional point, reuses a song significantly.
Yes, I don't. I mean, there's been they've reused the theme. Obviously, they've reused. There's a 007 theme they've reused, but and little riffs or notes and stuff. But I don't think there was a trailer for I think Spectre. I think the trailer for Spectre used OHMSS music.
I do remember that.
I thought, but that didn't show up in the movie.
Although the Spectre has that ending that one of the 15 things that bug me about Spectre is like it basically riffs on Her Majesty's Secret Service's ending. They drive away in a car together, but then nothing happens.
Yeah,
it just is a bland ending.
Right. Which could have been an ending of that series because he's going to drive off with Madeline and live happily ever after.
But
because they have all the time in the world.
But it riffs on that line a lot. It's.
Well, right off the bat, you see me when we were watching it. My hands went up. Remember when I couldn't believe it?
When
at the beginning of No Time to Die, they said the phrase. I thought, but then the music started.
You pointed out when this music, and we've included that the music was going to come in at a certain point. But
and it's going to be so fascinating to talk to a lot of people.
We're going to dive into why On Her Majesty's Secret Service over the years has become a lot of cinephiles' favorite Bond movie. But one of the most easiest descriptions, you just got to come down to one thing. It's got a kind of, how would you describe the ending? Just like a real shocker ending.
Right. Which one?
On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yeah, but that's in the book. It's in the book.
No, it's in the book. We're going to talk the book too a little.
Yeah.
But where Bond marries,
right,
and right after the wedding, she is murdered.
Right, and he says we have all the time in the world. They're off on they're in their DB6, not DB5, but DB6.
And No Time to Die, which especially when you first approach it, has such it's such a Bond generic title. But then when you see the movie, All the Time in the World, No Time to Die. How much are we going to talk about No Time to Die? That's why I'm like, do we?
I know it's I guess we just go back and forth. We bounce back and forth on it if we want.
All right. When did you first see On Her Majesty's Secret Service?
Well, that's a good question.
You were not like kids waiting for Empire Strikes Back, or I was trying to think of a good example for me. I was waiting for Back to the Future 3. You were not waiting for the next Bond movie? Or?
Oh gosh, no. When I came of age and started becoming, a movie kid, we all lined up. We were there for opening for all the Bond films. Now, my question is, what was my first one? I may have seen On Her Majesty's Secret Service on its theatrical run at the Victory. Because I remember I have this memory of asking my dad, in the opening credits, they actually have clips that reference.
That was the other crazy thing when we were watching this was the last few Daniel Craig movies have, being all as interconnected, they've really made a point to recycle characters from the whole 5 films.
Right.
This did that too, but it was also supposed to be a setup since it was the new.
They were really worried. They go, "Gosh, we got a new Bond."
George Lazenby's playing a Bond after Connery kind of
right.
was money issues the reason he quit.
And if you watch closely in the credits, they show clips from all the previous films. They show no Connery and they show no Lazenby. They just show scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I remember saying, "Daddy, is that those pictures from the early Bond films or something?"
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have a memory of the big screen visual of going up the Piz Gloria, the mountaintop where Blofeld is at in Switzerland, and the John Barry music playing. And I think that has embedded in my head.
That's embedded in a lot of people's heads. I forgot rewatching it. It's like, oh yeah, like big chunks of Inception are coming from here.
Right. Oh gosh, yeah. Which I had put in just not too long ago and just watched some of the OHMSS references. But so then it shows up on ABC in 2 parts. They cut it out of order. They put voiceover on it. It opens up with the ski chase scene. And they get a guy. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
That's crazy.
And then in Evansville, it was covered up by an Aces game part of it. So it was really, and it was my first time to really go. We were so excited about it. Aces is a local basketball team, the University of Evansville.
Thanks for explaining that.
Basketball team. So we were just like, wow, So then a friend and I, Timothy and I, found a Bloomington was showing all the Bond films. We heard up at IU.
When was this?
This would have been the late 70s, early 80s.
Okay.
After the ABC butchered.
Not you haven't seen any of the Connery Bonds by this point?
Oh no! No. Diamonds Are Forever, but is the one I know I definitely first saw.
Because that comes after this,
right? But I might have saw You Only Live Twice, possibly too. But
okay.
I was born 58, so in 68 I'm 10. So my dad was a big Bond fan.
You know what's nice about this is that Bonds were not emphasized in my childhood. Bond was not
big time in my childhood.
Not at all. And at the same time, Bond was like I always define them as the TBS movies. The Turner had them forever, and so I'd see like parts of them. I saw a lot of Roger Moore clips of Roger Moore's that way. Like I remember the alligator walks.
I think a lot of people your age, are Roger Moore Bond fans. Because of that's the age you're on.
Well, it's funny you mention it. My real connection to Bond didn't really hit. I really like the Daniel Craig ones, but Skyfall to this day, even after No Time to Die, is still my favorite Bond. And I really, really got into. I just went down the rabbit hole and made sure I'd seen everything, but except I still haven't seen a few of the Roger Moores. But this is the reason I'm so into the Daniel Craig one. Is okay. Alan Moore. Do you remember Alan Moore's introduction to Dark Knight Returns?
No,
It's quasi legendary, man. And like he mentions about how it puts out his redoing IP, redoing Heroes thing. That was at the time when he wrote it would have been 86. Was I don't know, breathtaking. It was more of his thing at the time, and then and he's abandoned it since. But like since then, like this is what everyone who's doing IP wants to do: find a new take on an old hero. And like he mentions, doing dark takes on old heroes too. And he mentions like Tarzan potentially, if he was raised by apes, would have sexually experimented with other apes. He talks about Alan Quatermain being an imperialist, but he talks about how when you go back to the Ian Fleming books, that the defining psychological trait of James Bond is utter contempt for women. And it's such a beautiful, interesting take on this boring, I don't know, like outdated relic from 50s, 60s Playboys ethos, you know?
Right. Yeah, but the last short stories of Fleming were serialized in Playboy.
This was serialized in Playboy in 3 parts.
Yeah. Well, he was writing. He was writing this when Dr. No was being shot nearby in Jamaica.
Yeah. It's the 10th. It's the 10th Bond novel.
And I had read all the books before I hit high school. I binged them all.
You have read them all.
I'll wait straight through them. Oh yes. And then I read Colonel's Son, the Kingsley Amis one. And then I started on the Raymond, and then the John Gardners came next, but I'm way behind on the newer ones.
I felt accomplished just because I finally went down to Casino Royale and read that, but I haven't read anything else. I have a few of them, including On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but this is also from the movie order versus the book order. They inverted this because this was the middle of I think because
the
when
Blofeld trilogy.
Yeah, the Blofeld trilogy. When I went back and started actually watching the Bond movies, Blofeld's mentioned in so many of the other movies that I thought Blofeld would have been over more books, but really, I guess he's only in the 3.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because Spectre eventually gives way to something else too.
Well, it started out being a Smersh he was fighting, and that was a real entity, and then he changed it to a fictional Spectre.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of reasons. I've forgotten more than I can remember.
I hear you, man.
Because like I said, I binged them back in grade school, but I want to go back and let me just finish off where I had maybe saw it when I was a kid on its run. I saw the Butcher 2-parter on ABC. And then I saw that we went up to IU, Bloomington.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could have been 35 millimeter because considering it's Indiana University.
Mm-hmm.
We got up there, we watched it. We just were just so in love with it.
Would they show them in order? How's this?
I don't know. It was on OHMSS and maybe Thunderbar. I don't know. It was a double feature, but we actually stayed because they were showing it again. We stayed and watched it again that night because we were so enamored of it. So then this same friend Timothy and I, we heard in Chicago Comic-Con, this guy was going to do a James Bond display and they were going to show HMSS there. So I went up there, not for the comic books, but for the Bond showing. Because at this point, there was no VHS. The cable was just now starting. So it was a chance to see it again, as a 16 millimeter print this time.
Was the Lazenby stuff an issue for you? Because Lazenby always was a punchline to me.
Well, it's interesting. Before I came over here to do this cast, I looked at the first significant James Bond in the cinema book that came out with John Bronson. Right off the bat, he's slagging on Lazenby.
Mm-hmm.
So that made that impression because a lot of us hadn't seen the film, but we didn't. It was hard to find it or hard to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So we were getting this impression that it's not that good. Lazenby's not that good. It's a weird film. Da 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 da. So it had this really kind of weird pedigree. In fact, can I read this? This is from a book, The Making of Iron Mix Services by this fanboy, but he has in here in the Legacy chapter. Here's a quote from Films in Review, January 1970. Plotless, meaningless, beneath contempt. In January 1970.
You're kidding.
Then, Films in Review again, December 1992. A perfect movie and the crowning achievement of the series. So that's pretty much the evolution this film's taken.
Well, on the face of it, you think that this movie was kind of it was one of the highest grossing movies of the year, but it made less than Thunderball, I guess, and they started saying it made less money, and Lazenby was probably the reason. In history for a while, I think generally had this idea that he was fired, but no, he announced in the middle of filming that he was just doing one.
Yeah, because he had some handlers and agents and just different things going on. He said, "Well, this Bond's an archaic. It's an antique, and then
Woodstock is going to kill it.
An Easy Rider, and all this other stuff happening. So it's not going to last. And so now you're a star. You can go off and do your own thing." But he got pretty much blacklisted. Because Saltzman and Broccoli, you don't want to mess with them. They're powerful. And he had to go off and he did an Australian Hong Kong martial arts film in Australia and all kinds of weird things. Took this, he's never really recovered from that. he was like, he's a freaking car salesman and a model when they hired him to play Bond. But I just recently was watching some Dinah Rigg interviews,
Mm-hmm.
and she said he goes, he was great. He was fine as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
He was playing the star and causing trouble on the set, and let his ego run rampant. And he now admits it. He realizes what he's done now.
One of the essays we're going to probably reference a lot is Steven Soderbergh wrote a giant essay on this. Not giant, but and one of the things he talks about is that, I mean, my personal opinion, Lazenby's great in the movie.
Yeah.
He points out that Lazenby is good, but one thing that's weird is that Lazenby has a presence, and they might still be trying to figure out, or they might be stuck on like trying to make him Connery. So like a lot of the one-liners maybe feel a little stiff. Although I laughed at a lot of them.
I think the evidence is there. I think he's wonderful in this film. I think, but I think he was going to be better. He had a
oh my gosh,
he had a 7-film contract, and he could have worked at that, done a couple of other offshoots and stuff, and just really, by the time he did his 3rd or 4th Bond, he would have been cooking, just so great. So I think but I love watching him in this. Every time I watch it more and more, I grow more fond of it.
Per this Soderbergh thing, I want to figure out when exactly did On Her Majesty's Secret Service that turn based on those 2 quotes you read? When did the turn happen? When did people start acknowledging this as the best movie?
That's a good question.
I have a good idea, but I want to hear what your take.
No, well, go ahead and give me that. It might help me think of that.
My personal theory is that at the end of the Pierce Brosnan era, whenever there was that long lag between into Brosnan, beginning of Daniel Craig, it was when Tarantino was trying to make his take, and he was actively, whenever they had the rights issue to figure out over Thunderball,
right?
I'd forgotten Tarantino or someone representing Tarantino had actively made a bid on it, but he was the one that pushed the idea, go back to its roots. I read different stuff on the internet what they talked about the specifics, but he's always pitched Casino Royale, and he said go back to the book, and it's been, he wanted for a while. Suppose there's this legendary meeting with him and Brosnan where he pitched Brosnan on it, and it was going to be like a black and white 60 set anamorphic. Well, anyway, I feel like that pushed a lot of people's minds, go back to the books. Even though in the 80s that was what everyone said with Timothy Dalton, go back to the books.
Yeah, I think it was just a very slow evolution, and I think, and like me and my friend Timothy, when we saw it finally got to see it, on a big screen, we're in our early 20s or late teens or whatever. If you love movies and you love the Bond franchise, you go, oh my gosh, this is. And of course, here's the thing that was the longest. I'm almost tired of this now, and I think it's almost put to bed now. Is well, only if Sean Connery been in this film. Oh, it was just like, I love this film, but it needs Sean Connery, or I want Sean Connery in it. And that's another whole issue.
I was going to ask you what you thought of that, because they originally talked about going in book order, and but you got the feeling that a lot of the reasons this movie is great is a lot of the things Peter Hunt specifically asked for.
Right, and I think here's this.
Get to the book, film in locations, dial back the gadgets a little.
Yeah, and you almost wish Sean had. Sometimes Sean.
How great it would have been if this had been his last one.
Right, but I'm always curious if Sean could have worked out, because he was starting to get a little pudgy, a little tired. Of course, people like and that's one complaint. They say Bond looks too fresh and young in this, and he's not world weary. But
okay,
that's just one thing that's right. But here's the thing.
I get it.
Talk about this one scene, and on Her Majesty's Secret Service, he's escaped the headquarters of Blofeld. He's got goons, Blofeld's goons, chasing him everywhere. He's on an ice rink in the middle of public, and he knows he has no help, no connection, nothing to help him out. He looks vulnerable.
Soderbergh lost. Really makes this point a lot. There's a lot of things that Lazenby does where, like, sometimes in these fights, Lazenby looks scared in a good way.
And I think, what is he going to, how am I going to get out of this? Could Sean have pulled that off? I mean, Sean's a great actor, and I don't want to.
Well, the other thing in that, as many Bonds have come by, we keep coming back to, like, these people give different dynamics to it. Like, Dalton's darker, Moore was funnier. Daniel Craig looks like he's actually been in these fights.
So, and then of course Tracy shows up, and there's that great scene when Emma Peel skates up. Emma Peel, I said Tracy, Dr. Rick.
I thought you did that on purpose.
No, I forgot. Well, she wasn't a former Avenger.
I was going to ask, were you watching the Avengers?
Yeah, Avengers was on my radar as a kid, so yeah, I knew we had Honor Blackman was an Avengers, and Goldfinger, and then Donna Rigg, and then a future Avengers is in the movie. Did you know that? And the girls, the girls that he's having him pass the one of them is Joanna Lumley. Fabulous, absolutely fabulous.
This is the Angels of Death.
Yeah, the Angels of Death. She goes on to be a New Avengers. They brought the series back called the New Avengers.
Oh.
And Patrick Macnee is back, and then they had 2 young people and Joanna.
And she's on Absolutely Fabulous?
Yeah, she's the two girls, the 2 main girls in that series.
That's embarrassing for me.
So, but yeah, well, and then Julie Edge is in one of the Angels of Death. She's a hammer. She's done a lot of interesting films, and then the girl who plays Trudy was in the Casino Royale spoof in '68.
Oof.
Yeah,
that's a tough one to watch. I don't know why. I think your recommendation was the main reason I watched this. But
I preached the word on this.
I think I finally got around to watching it in 2010 or 2011. And one of the interesting things about the Bond series, pretty much for its first 3 decades, is the directors were all in house, and it had mostly in house.
Well, yeah, I mean they assembled the crew. And Terrence Young was her first director.
This is the first. There's been like 3 examples of this, but this is one of the first examples of an editor being promoted to director.
Right.
Editor, second unit director being promoted to directing.
He had established an editing career, Peter Hunt, and I think Saltzman Broccoli wanted him in a previous Bond before they started the Bond films, and he said, "No, I'm doing this or that." So they finally came back to him at Dr. No and said, "Hey," and he goes, "Well, give me this much money, and then I'll do it." So he starts with Dr. No as an editor, works his way up. He's second unit directing, and he only did twice. And he's also kind of supervising editing by the time. He wanted to direct prior to You Only Live Twice, and I think he helped out on Thunderball so much, or he lived twice on Thunderball so much, they gave him a round trip. They paid for a round trip around the world, and he ended up in Japan when they were shooting You Only Live Twice, so he ended up helping him. Something that was strategic to get him there.
Wow.
But the United Artists, the powers that be, that maybe I guess the powers over Brock with Salty, it's hard to imagine that. But they said, well, we don't want him. He's not a proven director. Guy Hamilton and Terrence Young had been proven prior to their Bond films. So, and Lewis Gilbert, who did You Only Live Twice. Can you believe he did Alfie, I think, and he does You Only Live Twice.
Well, that's an outside hire then.
Yeah. Well, yeah, before You Only Live Twice, exactly. But so they finally give Peter Hunt the chance, and Peter goes, "I'm going to go for broke. I'm going to make this the best Bond film."
He mentions in the interviews he's coming off Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
I guess he
didn't direct it.
No.
And he's not credited as an editor on it.
Yeah.
But
he probably again, by the time of Thunderball, You Know Twice, he's almost supervising and helping out as opposed to the.
Well, it's crazy because Chitty Chitty Bang Bang's Ian Fleming with a script written by Roald Dahl, which is exactly You Only Live Twice.
Right. He worked and. Another thing about Hunt is, you're an editor.
This is what I was getting to.
You need to sit down maybe and examine this closely. But
this is there's a thing about editing where like editing is supposed to be invisible. This movie's the editing is amazing on this movie, but it's not invisible.
It's not invisible because it's like an editor gone crazy. Which is fun though. That's part of the fun of this film. Yeah, and I think.
Soderbergh has a line, I can't remember exactly what, but it's something like Eisenstein mentioned.
Okay. But
and he's also just like, I gotta steal shit from this.
But they think that I think the kind of the legacy of the Bond films, the music, the directing, the Connery, all this stuff. Another legacy is apparently Peter Hunt brought a whole new style of editing to modern filmmaking. The fight scene and From Russia with Love and the train. See, that's what I need to ask you But I was reading this the other day, and
I've heard that. I have trouble picturing exactly what they're talking about. But
I think you see it
because it's funny because like John Glenn, who's also going to go on to direct some of the other movies in the 70s and 80s,
the Bond films.
Yes, he's the editor on this, editor and second unit director, and you hear him talk about the editing style, trying to approximate Peter Hunt's editing style, and he says fast. And then you hear Peter Hunt talk about it, and he's like, "No, I laid everything out." This is always this is that like large gulf between bad editing and good editing, where like geography matters, knowing where people are, but at the same time, energy, kineticism, go fast. This is always the push pull that like goes back and forth between good and bad editing.
Yeah, but but like I said, you would be a nice, interesting case and study as an editor. You being an editor, sit down, maybe watch the first 3 back to back and then see what other films were out at that same time, and see if Peter is pushing the art of editing in a new direction, which some claim he did. Well, at least for the action franchises.
I wanted to at some point mention one of the Bond movies lineage cinematically. I always go back. It's a Truffaut quote where I originated from, but he basically said that the first Bond movie really is North by Northwest.
Oh yeah, well, true. Yeah, that's part of my. I use North by Northwest in my series.
Yeah,
I brought that up. It's the blueprint. It's a foundational film for this whole series. I think they haven't even approached Hitchcock, and the whole look and feel and music, and even the graphic design, the title credits, and everything. If you look at that, you go, yes, this is a proto.
Well, over
Bond
the
film.
years, waning influence or still zeitgeist influence, the Bond movies have always been the top shelf action movie,
They set the trend.
They've gone back and forth between. Sometimes they come back and they hit it, and sometimes they seem irrelevant.
Yeah, it's like I think as I've been growing up with all this stuff, and it's like Die Hard comes along, and that upped the ante. It was like that was now where action franchises needed to be.
Do you remember that period where Bond was trying to figure out what to do after the Bourne movies came out?
Well, then I was going to say the next after Die Hard, the Bourne films came out. Yeah, and that just like, okay, now we're really in trouble. And
I love the Bourne movies. They're not a great action influence on people, though.
Well,
especially if we're talking about geography and clear editing.
Yeah. Oh no, exactly. But, Green, and that became almost Greengrass's style. But yeah, it's like Bond set the trends, and it was ahead of the curve, and then it started lagging behind, and so the Daniel Craigs are really trying very hard to get that to be the king of the mountain again.
There was also, I remember right before Goldeneye came out, it was more just practical, like what is the Bond movies after the Cold War ended.
Here's the trick. Here's the trick of, I guess, what's a better word, trick, but anyway. They want to give you the Bond traditions. They want to keep that, but yet they gotta,
right.
but it's like, what's the
something new versus something familiar.
What did Denis Villeneuve just say?
Denis Villeneuve.
He said that the art of MCU movies becoming cut and paste, and so
Denis Villeneuve wants to do a Bond movie.
Well, I saw that. He's like, ooh. So remember they were courting Spielberg over the years to have to do one.
What was it? Lucas's selling point to him on Indiana Jones? Like, why don't you get to do your own Bond movie?
Oh yeah. So what's so beautiful about No Time to Die is they got the traditional tropes are in there, but it's still very modern in a way, don't you think?
Yeah, I remember this conversation being stronger before. There seems to be a period that broke open where sequels got better significantly. Forever it was just like, Cameron was the only one who could figure out sequels, and occasionally Spielberg, but for the most part, sequels were diminished returns.
Right, and a lot of times it's because of budget slash, like the Planet of the Apes films. Hey, make another one, but we're going to slash your budget.
Right.
And it's like, oh, come on.
And even with like Cameron and Spielberg,
the previous Planet of the Apes, not the new ones.
Yeah. Even with those, there was still this idea of like, we need to get the scenes everyone loved from the last movie into this one, but like let's tweak it a little way.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's always been an issue with sequels.
But what's so beautiful about No Time to Die, it actually has throwbacks to the book, images from the book, images from Dr. No.
The craziest thing I didn't know. One big plot point early on in No Time to Die is Bond goes to visit Vesper Lynd's grave from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. That was first revealed in the book On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Oh, okay, right. And then of course we have. When Roger, after the Moonraker film, they had Roger, James Bond, go visit Tracy's grave.
Yeah.
At the beginning of that, and then of course it turns silly because what he does with two quote unquote Blofeld, even though they call him. But they didn't have the rights to Blofeld Spectre. They were in
It was
contention.
like Man with a Cat.
Yeah,
or something like that.
In a wheelchair, Yeah. Well, I just think Honor Majesty's Secret Service is just so fun and unique because right off the bat you get this Q and M in the office, and Q goes, "I got a new gadget to show you. It's radioactive lint."
Yeah. Like they're making fun of the gadgets.
And they said right there, it's like, "Okay, guys, we're screw the gadgets. We're gonna get serious here."
Yeah, I had that in my notes too.
And then before we saw that, we saw the sign import exports. That's
the opening image of the
plaque of the building for MI6.
Yeah, that's
a coverage. It's a cover for MI6's. They call it exports.
That's the iris out from.
Yeah, and then actually Peter Hunt does a cameo. It's its reflection in the plaque there.
I think I saw that. Heard that in the commentary.
So they get to then we cut the and then M says, I like to be able to track where Bond is. And we cut and we don't see his face. They're holding off
the way that is shot is so expertly done.
Yes,
like the shot of the lower when he puts the cigarette in and the lower half of his face. Such a great lit shot, such an iconic introduction, but also withholding the real full blown introduction to the face.
Right, and then he lights a cigarette, just like the first time we saw Connery and Dr. No, he lighting a cigarette when he says Bond, James Bond. And the James Bond theme plays, but it's a more jazzier, more hip one. And he's in a DB. He's in an Aston Martin, but it's not the DB5. It's a DB6. It's a little more slicker. The next model up. So it's all these little things tweaked. And then of course he sees Dinah Rigg on the beach and goes down there.
Tracy's trying to kill herself at the beginning of this movie.
Yes, you saw.
It's so weird because that opening is so dynamic, but it's. They shot over 2 days. It's trying to be at sunset, so it has this really wonky, trying to do day for night-ish type. So but it looks hyper real, very dreamlike.
And tires squealing in the beach on the sand. That doesn't happen. And if you watch the editing, there's a couple of continuity in terms of the waves and the proximity of people, but you don't care.
Don't care.
No, because it works so well. It's so dynamic.
I pointed out the. Bond pulls out the gun sight to look at Tracy for her first shots, which are gorgeous shots, but at the same time, it's just a zoom lens with the, including him moving in. I was like, I don't think the gun sight does that, but I don't care.
And then, of course, we finally see his face, and when we see his face, he does the James Bond, and then she runs off.
He finishes the fight. She runs off,
and of course, what does he? He actually breaks the fourth wall.
Such a great line.
Guess what? This never happened to the other fellow. And looks right at the camera. And of course, I can only imagine the hoots and the hollers and the laughs in the theater for that.
I brought this up to you after we finished No Time to Die, and you seemed unfamiliar with it. You've never heard the theory that some people like that James Bond is just a cover name and that every other actor is a different person? Because I think a lot of Bond people hate that theory. Yeah. And it obviously doesn't track when you go visit Tracy's
I don't know
grave.
if I hate it. I have to really think about that. I mean, I was like I said, I'm a child of continuity. Thank you, Roy Thomas. And so anytime they threw any continuity to us in the films, we just loved it, and it was far and few between on any franchise. Now we got, the MCUs have now changed all that. But prior to that, we were just, so I don't know. I didn't really like, because I was a fan of the books.
Reddit didn't exist in the 70s is what you're saying?
So, but no, I don't know. It is going to be interesting to see where they go from here with the next, are they going to keep the cast and a new Bond or what?
I guess there's a part of me that is how hard a reboot and how now No Time to Die, which we've been skirting around the ending of No Time to Die, which but it's a pretty definitive end.
I know. I to my mind, I would have just started a brand new clean slate, just wipe it all out, start again. But
is this Spider-Man where we reboot every few years until Marvel then comes up with a multiverse?
Of course, what's weird is what made this kind of weird was the Judi Dench being bridging the two.
I mean, not to get really obtuse, but it reminded me of the DC New 52, where Grant Morrison and Jeff Johns got to keep their storylines going, but everyone else had to start over.
Yeah. Speaking of, you brought up Alan Moore earlier, and you talking about different Bonds. But
Yeah.
League, he just brings them all in. Even the Woody Allen, even Jimmy Bond.
Well, oh yeah, I forgot Jimmy Bond was even in that. The American Bond. Well, no, the other thing about this is in on Her Majesty's Secret Service, a big plot point comes to be going back to the Bond coat of arms, and the world is not enough is the phrase of it, but
they use that in a Pierce Bronson title.
Yeah, but also the grandfather, I believe, isn't he in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen along with M back in the day?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
the Alan Moore doing the lineage of Bonds throughout the years.
Right. So, I don't know. I yeah. But,
so back to the movie, no credit song because they kept saying the title was too long.
Well, it's interesting because they made a song. Had Lulu singing "The Man with a Golden Gun."
That my whole point is
you could have done one, but I think John was very smart. They were he was on a pretty good roll with all songs and music and everything, and I think he was wise. Who came up with the idea to do a music video in the middle of a Bond film and the romance, but they opted to do the song with the lyrics for the love theme between Bond and Tracy. So that freed him up to do.
It comes in 35 minutes into the movie.
Wow! So that freed him up to do an instrumental, and it's a great instrumental. It's like I said, they've used it now, and there's a snippet of it in No Time to Die.
I want to throw something at you, really, really from the side. But John Barry, you mentioned it being kind of very jazzy early on this. Am I misreading? Is there a Bitches Brew vibe to some of the jazz work in this and the organ work?
Oh, it's been a long time since I've listened to that album. You have to tell me because you're probably more familiar with it right now than I am.
I heard it a lot last night. Yeah. That's all. That's the only reason I brought it up.
No, but it could be very well because he was a known jazz musician before he got the Bond gig.
Bitches Brew 67, I think.
Yeah.
The title sequence also has a shit ton of clocks,
which is in No Time to Die. Right.
Yeah. And just time being an issue, but and also hourglasses. And then whenever the M scenes in this are very much in the Craig more what Daniel Craig put up, where like they don't feel like exposition scenes, like Bond resigns.
Yeah. And I love, of course, talk about Easter eggs in the new Craig film. There's a ton of them, and then the OHMSS. He goes back to his office. He pulls out the belt, the knife belt for Honeychild White, Ursula Anderson's character.
You mean Easter egg in On Her Majesty's Secret Service?
Both films, yeah, but this is the Easter eggs in On Her Majesty's Service. Yeah. George Lazenby goes back to the office, pulls out the belt from Dr. No, pulls out the watch that Red Grant was wearing and tried to kill him in Formation 11. He pulls out the little breather thing, Thunderball, as a theme song to play underneath, and then of course he toasts the Queen. A very nice young portrait of the Queen at in the office, and he thinks he's resigning, and he's cleaning out his desk, and of course Moneypenny, being very astute, makes a change, saying he's taking a leave, going on vacation. So it's a nice scene, and of course Lazenby does the hat on the rack, and there's that's another throwback because it wasn't consistent all through all the films, but this one they want to make sure that you're watching the traditional Bond film. But what do you think about watching it again last night? I know you watched it again last night. How do you feel about Telly Savalas as Blofeld?
I think he's fine, but I don't. Well, Donald Pleasance seems to be my favorite Blofeld, besides maybe obviously Christoph Waltz. And Christoph Waltz was not given a lot of opportunity. I think Christoph Waltz is way better as Blofeld in No Time to Die than he is in Spectre.
Yeah, of course. In Spectre,
Spectre's a fucking mess, man.
Well, I'm not.
I need to rewatch it to give it a fair shake, but
I'm
the Blofeld storyline in there was where I completely checked out.
That's where, connecting Bond and Blofeld growing up together as stepbrothers.
Did you know we've known each other forever, and we're gonna turn to be hero and villain?
Yeah, that's Hollywood thing more so than
But Donald Pleasance is pretty solid.
Kill Bond now.
And I guess I didn't understand why they recast Blofeld so many times. There was supposed to be a joke in Diamonds Are Forever where or in Diamond Forever he says we've had plastic surgery.
Yeah, well that's
from the book too.
Yeah,
Books too.
there's a real continuity problem. By the way, before I forget this, the production name for the No Time to Die was Shatterhand.
Oh,
and that was the name for Blofeld in You Only Live Twice. He was going on the name of Dr. Shatterhand.
I didn't know that, but I knew I knew it was a Bond term because I think they were talking about it was a potential title for another Bond movie.
And while we're here at that, the people in the poison pools in the island
And No Time to Die.
in No Time to Die. That's a throwback to Blofeld's Poisonous Gardens in You Only Live Twice.
Oh wow!
So anyway,
I think one thing I noted is that Telly Savalas probably taught Kevin Spacey's Kaiser Sose how to smoke cigarettes. The way he holds a cigarette.
I just always felt let me say a few things about Blofeld here. For my sake, I thought I got Kojak in my mind. I got American thug policeman urban guy, and I want Blofeld. He's like the Ra's al Ghul in the Batman. The way Neil Adams drew him. I want him to be this big international European aristocratic type bad guy, and so that always
that's missing an eye too.
Yeah, and I'm kind of getting I warm up to Telly a little bit every time I watch it, but it's okay. But I don't like him getting in skis and participating in the action with his minions.
Okay,
that's not the thing. I don't see Blofeld doing that.
My bigger issue with him is I think he has earlobes.
Yeah.
After all this time where he's like, I don't have earlobes, I've had them surgically removed. No, you look like you still have earlobes. There's a close up of your face where it looks like you still distinctly have them.
Right. So he's actually skiing on the skis, and I love the phrase hit him off of the prefaces instead of hit him off of the passes.
Soderbergh really criticized a lot of the process work, especially in the ski sequence, which it's
some of it's you can see it, but man, some of that stuff is great.
That's it. It's one of the sequence as a kid. Speaking of Bond-esque movies, that taught me a lot of VFX, or started like I would watch over and over and be like I could tell which shot is fake and which shot is something real, which shot is a stunt double person. Is the sequence in Indiana Jones Temple of Doom where the raft they jump out of the plane with the raft and then they slide down the mountain. You can watch that in real time and tell process shot or optical printing shot, model shot, stuntman shot. Right. You can tell like that, and that's how this sequence works. And it's just that's where a process shot probably was at the time,
Right.
Like tell me what the good process shots were. Like Hitchcock's gonna do. I've always said this. Like Family Plot, like that movie. Would be 6 years after this. Like he's still doing process shots in there, and like it just takes you out of the movie completely.
Right. So getting back to Blofeld in this movie, Non Her Majesty's Service, and as much as I love it, I almost want to say it's a flawless film, and it's just great and wonderful. There is a continuity problem, because they were. This goes back to the book, but they're out of order now, and they're kind of already messed up the whole book movie relationship. Bond and Blofeld have met in the previous film.
Yes.
And you got this. Is he not recognizing Bond as Bond? What's the deal? I mean, the pair of Harold Lloyd glasses is not going to hide in a dubbed voice.
Clark Kent.
Yeah, but only thing I always, when I was younger, I did the OHMSS panel this weekend down at SpyCon. Mm-hmm. The audience kind of groaned at this.
Oh no!
Because I said, well, you remember he gets surgery and he only twice to make him look Asian. And it doesn't really hide the fact that it's Sean Connery, but that's kind of what you're supposed to think that he's.
Well, doesn't the book of You Only Live Twice open? It opens after this, and Bond
after HMS.
Yeah, and Bond goes on a bender and loses his memory.
Oh yeah,
and that's why he's in that spot.
Well, he loses. Yeah, he eventually he comes back to and Ben with the golden gun. He's going to assassinate him because of the things that happened.
Right, I did read about that.
But anyway, so I go, well, he still had the. Blofeld only saw him in his Asian makeup, his Asian surgery, do-over in his face. So he didn't know really what Bond looked like. And he's still Hurley Bray. That's who he's.
And you got a groan for that?
Yeah, they were kind of, like that because, I was trying to, it's like,
I appreciate the effort.
Thank you.
I appreciate the pushing that logic boulder up a hill.
And then one other last thing about Blofeld I do like, you already mentioned it once already. In Diamonds Are Forever, they Saltzman and Broccoli go back. They get Connery. It's the beginning of the end because of the humor thrown in that film.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the fact that the opening of the sequence, we find out Bond's he thinks he's killed Blofeld, and he goes to see him, and him says, "How did you have a good time off?" He was after Blofeld. His revenge on Blofeld was on his own personal time, and then he goes on the Diamonds Are Forever mission. So they do a little reference, there.
I like the idea. I think over the years, especially coming back to it, of the serialized Blofeld. I liked it better than the actual execution of it, but the ideal of it was because when Kevin Feige was trying to lay out at the very beginning of the MCU, or at least when Avengers came out and they introduced Thanos in it, he said, "Yeah, Thanos is going to be the Blofeld of the Marvel universe," and I like the idea of the big bad to use TV parlance too.
I mean, so that I guess we should say that. Do we need to tell the plot of On a Majesty Server? I'm sure everybody listening. We're
an hour in, though, dude.
So
honors. Okay.
Another thing I want to mention too.
Do you want to do the plot?
No, I mean I think we're okay. I think, but the funny thing is, I currently at Barnes and Noble, there's all kind of permutations of the buying the bonds on Blu-rays and DVDs. You get the box set and older box sets. There's a series in white collections, white covers. And so Sean Connery Collection 1, Sean Connery Collection 2. There's one for Timothy Dalton. There's a couple for Roger Moore. And there's one that Daniel Craig's. They had them all up there on the shelf. But no George Lazenby OHMSS.
Because he only did the one.
I know. And they have made one so in that format that you can sell it with. But they didn't stock it on the shelf.
This never happened to the other fellows, apparently.
To this day. It has a little bit of stigma to it, the black sheep of the family,
Real briefly back to the editing. Soderbergh also said Eisenstein, but he also said New Wave, and there's a lot of jump cuts in there, but they're very serviceable jump cuts. They're very good for you could tell why they did them exactly.
What did you notice the fades with the helicopters coming and disappearing? There's a couple of really strange fades that don't make sense.
Kind of. Yeah. I noticed one shot where it was the same frame and they dissolved in between the same frame but you only noticed. I mean, there's just a lot of editorial trickery to fix stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I was reading
if you give an editor a long time on a movie and they know that stuff's good, but they're always like, I can fix something. That's what they do.
I going back to the whole stigma on George Lazenby, I don't, because I think he was fine, but there was, I think I read somewhere where he's got the presence, but he doesn't have the acting chops, and Peter Hunt goes, I can fix that.
Yeah. Well, Soderbergh does also point out, and I really noticed it mainly in the scene where right before he's figuring out the coat of arms stuff and he's talking to the genealogy person, where it's really bad. I think Soderbergh points out they cut off his lines. One of the things an editor will do, an editorial trick when you're dealing with a bad performance, is you cut to the other person in the scene, because especially if someone has long bits of dialogue, because dialogue, if you see someone talking on screen, that's the hardest thing to maintain. So if someone's giving a speech and that dialogue needs to stay in the movie, that's when you cut to someone reacting to it. And in that scene, they cut Lazenby off a lot through there. And I don't know if they needed to, because it looked fine.
Yeah.
But that's criticizing another person's editing. You don't know what they were dealing with.
What do you think about that really weird flash shock edit in the avalanche?
Bulb? Yeah, I put a note on that.
And then of course there's that one scene where you see little models but you probably wouldn't on a Blu-ray. Yeah, it sticks out. I wonder if you're in the drive-in or the theater, you might not have noticed that.
Well, there's also just Peter Hunt's been dealing with almost a decade of being the top action franchise.
Yes, right.
Exactly. Everything he's doing is the best. So yeah, he's pushing it.
And I love the flash. And just nice little tricks like the after the avalanche, and he can't find Tracy. That imagery in the window, and the flashback of Blofeld's men finding Tracy. It was not done in imagery in the glass, I think.
Yeah. They look like forward projection, but it looked too strong of it. I mean, you even go back to the Tracy's first introduction shot in the beginning of the movie, and not her introduction shot, but the car driving by. like in the rearview mirror, that's not the actual thing. That's an optical printed part into it.
Right. Yeah.
And there's constant this manipulation using what was available at the technology at the time.
And we're talking about speeding up the editing and such editing. And then he lingers like that. How about that lingering on the bullfighters in Portugal?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, oop, hello. I mean, he just I think just to give you the sense of scenery, the location you get. Or how about the shot of the rack?
Good editing isn't always just to like do it fast.
Right. What do you think about the rack focus when Lazenby throws a knife in Draco's office?
It takes forever to get back to the calendar.
Yeah.
Because he does it, and you look back. Tracy's father looks back.
The glasses. The rack is, I think, in time with the glasses.
Right.
It's beautifully done.
But it calls attention to itself. But it's fun. It's fun.
I think that's why. I think we're film fanatics like it so much because you get to see all this stuff. It's like when Tarantino says you want to learn how to direct a film, watch Once Upon a Time in the West.
Mm-hmm.
You love the story and the film, the acting, but you cannot help but watch the technique of Sergio in that. So here you get and speaking of Once Upon a Time in the West, Tracy's father, Gabriel Frazzetti, is Mr. Choo Choo.
Oh, right. Okay. I did not connect that at all.
Yeah. We did mention that it wasn't a box office dud by any means, but it seems because in terms of the franchise, it's kind of like, I think for the longest time, here's a good metaphor or analogy is how everybody talks about Iron Man 2 or Thor 2 and compared to the MCU movies. I guess OHMSS was that in terms of the franchise.
I guess. I think it'd be more but it's the one that secretly was really good that everyone shit on.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
What's your what's your analog for that?
Well, no, I don't know. That's a good question.
I know there's one on tip of my tongue. Anyway,
but yeah, there's so much more about. I mean, the cinematography.
Here's the thing I do want to bring this up. It is a beautiful movie. I do not deny that. But a lot of people say it's the most beautiful Bond film. And You Only Live Twice was shot by Freddie Francis, who's shot by freaking David Lean cinematographer. You can't say like the movie after David Lean cinematographer. It is a beautiful movie.
And there's really some weird choices that I think add to the film, like that laboratory, Blofeld's lab, that purple light, and also you're almost in a horror film. Well,
there's also a filming trend that I noticed more when I watched like. Our Prisoner episode was apropos of it. Star Trek was where like everyone was trying to show off color TV, so like they had the multicolored sets, and like whenever you have those surreal shots of whenever Blofeld plays the tape to get everyone to sleep, and you have that shot of Lazenby where you can see the ceiling behind it, and it's multicolored behind that. Like it's like, this is film, and you don't need to show off color TV.
Yeah,
but that was a filmmaking trend.
But I liked it. I thought it added to the weirdness and uniqueness.
Oh, definitely did.
And then by the way, speaking of that bed, him in this bedroom, remember that. And again, Hunt's pulling out all the tricks. There's a slow motion, he gets knocked out.
Yes,
that slow motion move, that's wonderful. And then like here's another good thing about. I don't know if this would not be in the screenplay, but this is probably Peter Hunt telling Lazenby to do this. Remember the scientist throws the flask and it's like it's acid, some kind of weird, dangerous acid, and it melts.
No, and then, I don't run that part.
And Lazenby runs by it and looks at it, does a double take on it. Just the little touches like that. And I think to me that's again, I think a lot of times why we love films, the films that really stick with us have the little touches, the little scenes that stay with you.
Yeah,
this is chock full of them, and just and I think
the things that work usually, and it's usually stuff that you can't script. You come up on the day, it's an idea, and it works. So, I do want to point out, continuing on North by Northwest mentions, whenever Tracy gets the ring, that shot kind of reminded me of the transition at the end of North by Northwest, whenever they pull him off the mountain.
Right.
So, I mean, we've already mentioned what happens at the end of. How it ends. So
on Majesty's Service or No Time to Die?
Yes, on Her Majesty's Service. Because I really want to go in the parallels between the two.
Yes, let's go. Yeah, sure. We at the
I should also mention, my introduction to the On Our Majesty Secret Service ending was Austin Powers making fun of it.
Oh, really? They did make fun? I can't remember that.
But they made fun of it in an oblique way where it's like not emotional, or I forget. It's someone getting shot while driving on a mountain.
Oh, we should mention that the wedding sequence is wonderful too, because you got all M talking to
Moneypenny's reaction.
Moneypenny, he throws the hat to her, and then of course then Q says he never takes care of his property, and then Bond says, I have all the gadgets. I don't need any gadgets from you, Q, this time around. And then M just talking shop with Tracy's father. That was good because Bond was off the grid with Tracy's father when they attacked Miss Gloria.
Right. So M doesn't know that Tracy's father is.
No, they do. They were very aware of who each other are. Okay. That's the beauty of it. That it's like Dr. Doom and Reed Richards talking together or something. Really nice little touch there. And then they drive off in the Aston Martin. And of course, Blofeld is driving the car. It's really Irma Bunt that does the shooting
because Blofeld's injured.
Yeah, he's in a neck brace with a bobsled sequence. So and shoots him, and right before that, James says, "Oh, we have all the time in the world," and then Tracy dies, and I think George just pulled it off perfectly.
You do?
Oh yeah, I think he did a great job holding her. And
there's a part of me that feels a little stiff on it, but you know what it is Peter Hunt flat out said they did different takes, and one of the takes he cried, and then another he didn't, and they kept it because they were like, Bond doesn't cry, and that seems like bullshit to me.
Yeah, and then I also read just this morning that apparently I don't know if this is true or not. He kept them in his trailer and got them all kind of worked up. And so you can have some emotional intensity at that scene when it was shot. He purposely said, "Stay in your trailer and don't get out," or something like that.
Lazenby at one point said Peter Hunt didn't talk to him after the first day or something. That sounds like
there's all kinds of things about Donna giving him had garlic in her breath, and when they did a kissing scene, and they would actually made editorial cartoons in the UK press.
Oh man,
it was,
print the legend,
right? So, but let me just one thing about that sequence critically. Another, as much as I love the film, that little bit of the
you said this after we finished No Time to Die.
Yeah,
when I was asking you about
right. We have the little bit of the we have all the time in the world plays a little bit, but I think they were so scared to end on such a sad, emotional note. They just jam, then they go quickly to the James Bond theme, and it just ruins the emotional spell of that sequence. I almost wish I could go. If I would do my own edit cut, I would get rid of that and just let it play out.
In silence or something.
Right, but they want or the music. We have all the time in the world, but it just I think the Saltzman and Broccoli that by this time they knew. Well, we got to let people know we're going to be back, so we just
I forgot. Does the movie end? But Diamonds or James Bond will be back in Diamonds Are Forever, or just Diamond? James Bond will be back.
I wouldn't say it said Diamonds, but I may be wrong. But I think it did at the one originally.
I've had this theory for a long time, but I've heard. I hate to say it. I used to have more examples of it that made this theory really great. But one of the reasons that in genre movies or just in genre storytelling that certain best ofs have been elevated to that point. In particular, I'm thinking of this On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and in Star Trek, the original Star Trek. The reason people say City on the Edge of Forever is the best episode from that. And at both of those into the episode, the main Lothario character finds the love of his life dead.
Good point. That's true. So, No Time to Die.
Look, I'm not going to say it's a perfect movie. I still think Skyfall is a better movie. I'm questioning whether Casino Royale is the better movie. I still think I'm giving No Time to Die. I need to see it again. I think it is Cary Fukunaga was a great choice. He's the first American director to direct a Bond movie. The thing going into all Bond movies, the reason half the Bond movies suck and half of them are amazing, it's this tension going to every single one, mainly around the producers, where it's always they go in with this script that seems to be changing all the time. And you never know if this is going to be an amazing movie or a movie that doesn't pass the smell test of logic. And so going into this, there's some elements of it that are a little overridden. I think Bond is saying "I love you" maybe a few too many times. But all that being said, I think this is. I don't know if it's just because it's a more modern movie. I think it's the most emotional Bond movie.
Yeah, and of course it had me right off the top when he says, "We have all the time in the world," and the music starts to play, and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh!" To reference that Bond film gives, to me, my mind.
It didn't really blow me that much because I thought the last film was referencing it so much.
Yeah, but not as overt, I guess.
But then it pays off. It's good. That's good writing because like the end of the movie reference. I'm just gonna fucking say it.
Yeah.
Bond dies.
Yes.
Bond dies, and they play again with him saying the only time
we have all the time in the world.
And also continuing the spoilers, the thing that I don't think they never did in the books, Bond has a child.
Yes.
But they do the 5 years later at a certain point in the movie, and Bond and it's funny because right away they address it, and she says, "That's not your kid," even though the kid they asked has exactly Daniel Craig's eyes.
Right.
And then they write it in, they comment on it multiple times, but then you realize, nope, she was just saying that, and everyone knows it was an obvious lie.
Yeah, it's such a strange because the book in this with OHMSS in a weird way because like. The two different series don't really match up.
They don't.
But in OHSS, the woman dies and Bond stays alive.
Right.
And so now we got the opposite, where the woman is alive.
I made a really shitty joke that neither you or we watched this with our friend Todd Fox. I said, "Oh, it's like Star Trek Into Darkness, where Star Trek Into Darkness riffs on Wrath of Khan. Only Kirk dies." And then Kirk comes back to life 5 minutes later, so it's stupid. On top of the fact that like they redo the dialogue and the dialogue does not work. This is where they riff on the dialogue. It's just James Bond being the like model of misogyny for a lot of people for years.
Isn't it there's some new headlines now on Facebook or social?
Of this being the woke Bond.
Well, the previous all bombs are rapey. Or they're using the word rapey.
Fukunaga used that word. He did. I forget which one. I think I have Thunderball. I forget which one he referenced. But also the idea of a Bond girl in this one is like it goes out the window, but for a reason because one Bond has a relationship that like post Vesper Lynn that like is just from the other movies, and like Ana de Armas, her Bond girl in this is so great, but it's basically a glorified cameo.
Yeah, two interesting Bond women in terms of.
Then you have another 007.
Yes, right, and she was wonderful too. She was really good.
Yeah.
What about? And then we also Felix Leiter dying.
But how many times has Felix Leiter died in a Bond movie, really?
But this one specifically references the way Vesper died in some ways.
Underwater?
Yeah, the way he has to let it go in the water, and I thought that was a nice little touch.
I didn't notice that. But finishing what I was saying with the Bond being kind of the model of misogyny, like the fact that you aren't expecting a Bond movie to end with Bond dying, even though supposedly that's the reason Danny Boyle got fired off of doing this. Was he wanted to, and Daniel Craig really wanted to kill off Bond too. So if you don't assume that's going to happen. It's just it was so unforeseen but kind of touching that Bond then says that line to his surviving baby mama and his daughter.
Yeah.
And then the last shot of the last scene in the movie of them driving off into the mountains, but it's just mother and daughter.
Right.
And then she says, "I want to tell you about a man named Bond, James Bond."
We'll get teary-eyed.
Right. Right.
But interesting. I also think that I went into this. I saw the trailers, and I'm thinking, I
had that same reaction.
I was just like, what more can you do with action scenes in a Bond film? With I guess with the MCU movies, you got weird powers that you can do something maybe new with the CGI effect. I guess that's the appeal of Fast and Furious. I don't know. I haven't seen a Fast and Furious.
I do think one of the things the Bond movies over the years has done really good at is it is maintained, especially as we get more green screen stuff. Bond movies, you really do have the feeling. No, they flew the entire production to jet set across the world.
Right, and a lot of it's in camera as much as they can do it.
Yeah.
But so I'm just thinking, I guess, I don't know. I have to. The test will be seeing it again, which I'm really looking forward to.
Same here.
But I'm just thinking, I think the emotional resonance and the scripting for the characters made me appreciate the action scenes. Maybe I don't know, but
Yeah.
better if it just been another Bond going around and not without Madeline or something. I don't know. Is this? And then he actually goes to Vesper's, the cemetery where Vesper's buried,
Which, as I mentioned earlier, came from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but it's a plot point in this.
Yeah.
It's a massive plot point.
And I can't emphasize. I don't know what prompted me, but I watched all four, the previous four, back to back, and I was just amazed how tightly constructed. They're almost like MCU tightly constructed. So that's another reason I almost want a clean slate. This is a 5-film cycle that's so tight. Even the Quantum of Solace everybody hates, but it's still got interest. It has.
I probably shouldn't have been so mean to Spectre, since most of my ire should really be on for Quantum of Solace.
But there's so much continuity in all of them, and it's just really amazing. I'm so happy to see them play off that. I wish it would just stay that way.
Yeah. I'm impressed by how emotional the movie is. The reason I still think Skyfall is my morning star of Bond movies is that was the one where I felt like they got thematic resonance. Like, to me, the high point of Skyfall is the Tennyson quote when Judi Dench starts doing Ulysses and does the poem over Bond fighting. Like, there's this vibe that Bond should be about, I don't know, British stoicism in its own way, and perseverance, and on top of the fact of like its history with the way it treated women. It's like these ideas of like Bond, especially Roger Moore Bond, for me, like really perpetuates a lot of, to use the overused word, toxic masculinity, or the idea of it. And I like the idea that Bond, going back to Alan Moore's point of contempt for women, that this is not something to admire, that Bond is trying to overcome this or even realize this about himself, or that male modes, this is something to overcome.
Right. And, we just lost, John Le Carre just passed away not too long ago. And we the Bond, especially the films, just got so over the top and so fantasized the secret agent world.
They keep coming back to being grounded for over a few years.
Right. That Bond is this way because the secret agent world is a dirty business, and he has to do things that nobody would want to do or want to do.
The shadows, as Judi Dench says.
So, but then that can be problematic sometimes in some of the PC world we live in.
I think wasn't David Denby had I didn't read it. I just saw his headline. He kind of had the snide like, I don't want a dour Bond for after the pandemic. I get that sentiment a little bit, but I want to point out that's why a movie like On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Bond also can be about the top of the line, the state of the art of filmmaking too.
Yeah.
Like what money can do, the action thrills you can get.
What about the weirdness of that they were playing with bacteria and?
I was going to point that out too. Yeah, because the Angels of Death basically are kind of in No Time to Die, but not really.
But
they're spreading that's a
well, and the film was done before the pandemic hit. That's what's really bizarre.
I was watching this and kept thinking like, man, if this is like watching a school shooting movie right before Columbine.
Ooh.
I'm surprised. Like I get what they pushed, and I said this last week. No Time to Die is the first time I've been in a theater. I'm like, okay, I finally think movies are back. Like this is a legitimately. I'm not cheerleading. I'm wanting this movie to be good just because I'm wanting things to go back to normal and being like taken away with the story. I'm not putting effort into liking this movie. I genuinely like this movie,
and I'm just really curious. Because they when a hero dies, you lose a percentage of box office.
There's a giant part of me that thinks that it's like I said this to you guys after the movie. It's like a villain dying at the end of a movie who's going to appear in the next movie unharmed.
It does say James Bond will return.
It ends with James Bond will return.
So hopefully everybody will just I think we've advanced since On Her Majesty's Secret Service. in terms of audience. They people know this now, so hopefully it won't hurt it. And then, but what really intrigues me is all the just general audience movie going people, or just the casual Bond fans. Will the OHMSS references just go right over them head? People won't catch that.
I think that's what's great about the movie is they totally could, but it still emotionally works.
No, it works. Yeah, that's the beauty of it. But boy, does it add an extra layer when if you're a Bond fan, or or you're a fan of that film. Boy, it really does a number on you.
I hate to say it, I'm in the exact opposite camp with you. I think that I don't want them to reboot.
You want Ray Fiennes to come back and Naomi Harris. And I love Winshaw's Q. What a wonderful Q.
Yeah. I thought they were going in a good direction. There's a certain need for reinvention, a certain amount.
Maybe his cousin Jimmy Bond can show up.
Hey, I'm Jimmy Bond. You remember me from the 50s?
Well, that's but Woody Allen was his cousin. Woody Allen.
Oh God!
Bond. Remember Jimmy Bond?
I didn't realize Hoagie Carmichael was Ian Fleming's idea for.
Right.
Oh.
And then what about, or does Daniel Craig have a brother? Because Neil Connery did a Bond film. Well, you don't know. Do you know anything about Neil Connery's film?
No.
Yeah, Sean's real life brother, Neil Connery, kind of looks like Sean. They're not that big an age difference. They actually, an Italian company got him to play a film called Operation Kid Brother. That's one of the titles, Operation Kid Brother. He's a doctor. Apparently, they don't say his name, but the agent they need can't do it, so they go get his brother, who's a doctor, and he's Neil Connery, and Bernard Lee and Lois Maxwell, M and Moneypenny show up in the film. The guy who played Largo, Fado Celli, and Thunderball, he's in the film, and the girl from Professional Love's in the film, and Ennio Morricone music. And
Morricone did music for it?
Oh yeah. There's all kinds of Morricone did a lot of music that nobody knows about.
All right, I forgot before the last few years when he was not doing much of anything.
Well,
it was such a treat to get a score from him.
If you only know his music from American films, you don't know how much he's done over in Europe. Tons and tons of stuff. But anyway, yeah. So they could get Daniel Craig's brother, and he can be Jim's. He can.
I think there's something kind of reverse ending after us talking about the emotional highs, the legacy of Bond. That's how we end everything.
Yeah, and both Sean and Neil passed away within the last year or so. So, did you see the Jean-Paul Bomando funeral footage?
No.
They had a state funeral for him.
I think I heard that was I'd heard about it.
You need to watch the video. It'll move you to tears. And they played one of Morricone's theme from one of Bomondo's films.
Oh, wow.
And it's just amazing. And I thought, Sean Connery should have had a state funeral. If Clint Eastwood dies, they should have.
That's why I heard about it, because you said Sean Connery should have had a state funeral.
Yeah, it's like look how France treats their artists.
I think this is Ted wants his favorite people to have a state funeral.
So Meryl Streep, they should get one. Maybe I don't know, De Niro.
I think the area I want to end on is if you have some time, I think it's only a 5-minute video. One of my favorite, this was a post Skyfall video. It's got spoilers for Skyfall in it, but go on YouTube and look up 50th Bond anniversary, and someone edited together like a 5-minute clip of all the Bonds, and it almost is like if it's a single story. Because one of my former guests on the show, one of my closest friends, Dustin Lavelle, I don't know if to this day he's seen a single Bond movie, and every time I recommend one to him, he's like, do I have to watch all the other ones before I see this one? This video, look it up, 50th anniversary Bond, kind of treats all of it as if Bond's being told in one story, and it gets me every time.
Fascinating. Yeah, I can't, for those, if anybody listening hasn't watched Honor Majesty Secret Service, do so. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how it holds up. And it's just so, there's just not just the trivia Easter egg stuff in it, but just the, Donna Rigg, what a great actress. She's a Shakespearean actress. And
half the reason they said they got her was because if Lazenby's doing his first on-screen lead on role, they need to have an actress great to prop him.
Right, and John Barry is cooking with the great music. The Louis Armstrong. This is near his death, and he does a wonderful job singing. In fact, ironically, you get to hear the entire song in No Time to Die, as opposed to on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
That's where in No Time to Die really clicks in, because that song,
To hear that,
it's such a crazy great move, but it's the credits song.
in the credits song, and to hear it to the IMAX system, it's just like, oh, so beautiful.
After that last scene, yeah, you can understand why you were a mess, and I was crying. I
was using my
mask,
my pandemic mask as a handkerchief because I was just like, I was boy, I was embarrassing myself.
Both these movies are great. Yes. I think it's nice to have a good Bond movie in the world.
Yes,
a new one.
Good stuff. Yeah. And I we could even keep on rambling. Once I watched one of the viewings of On a Majesty service, I sat there and I jotted down notes for everything that went by. You couldn't even do a proper audio commentary because I would want to pause it and say, look at this, and pause it again, look at this, pause it. There's just so much going on in that film, and I'm looking forward to the second.
Because of the Easter eggs, you mean?
Yes, Easter eggs, and just the editing, the cinematography, the music, everything. There's so much to talk about in that film. Finishing
up off of the Soderbergh said it's the most cinematically rich one. It's the one he wants to steal from more than anything else.
I love the more, Soderbergh. We're on the same page. He loves Lester. He loves OHMSS. What can I say?
Oh no, I think that's actually now that mention those, that's our time to wind down. So, thanks everybody for listening. This is a long episode, but you have all the time in the world.
Thank
you, Ted. I was trying to set you up for it. You did it. Thank you.